so now let's get back to our retina. So here we are. So we've sort of talked, very briefly about the photodetectors. Now we're going to talk about the ganglion cells. One of the things about the ganglion cells is that they take information from these things called these horizontal and bipolar cells. And the horizontal cells, just as you might think, they take information across a local area and bring them together to the ganglion cells. So you might ask, why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Thank you, Megan. Okay. There are a lot of reasons, one of which has to do with dynamic range. In fact, let's go to this picture first, and then we'll go to the numbers. So here's a series of photographs where you adjust the amount of light coming into the image from 1,000th of a second to 1/4 of a second. You see here, there's an outdoor part of the scene right there. So 1,000th of a second is enough. Actually, when you open it up a little bit more, it gets a little bit easier to see these things. And then as I let in enough light that I can see the interior really well, this outdoor thing is totally blown out. And yet, if you were to stand there, what you would see is something that looks like this. You'd have no problem seeing the indoor stuff and the outdoor stuff. It might be, a little bit harder to see, but not anything like the camera. And that's because your system deals with dynamic range so much more effectively. Okay? Here's another example of photographing a high dynamic range scene, right? So if you wanted to see the stained glass really well, you'd have to miss the rest of the inside of the church. If you want to see the rest of the inside of the church, these things get blown out. But you would have no problem seeing this. You would see the beautiful stained glass, and you would see the church. You now know that there are computational photography methods called high dynamic range. So you have a high dynamic range on your iPhone or your little phone or whatever, or in Photoshop, something like that. That's a way of blending together a series of pictures to automatically select which regions from which image should be selected, or how much you dial up or dial down each region of the image in order to composite the whole thing into a high dynamic range image.